Hey everybody, welcome to this week's discussion. So what we're talking about is, number one, the importance of reconciling your subledger to your general ledger, your control account. And then we're going to talk about, some of the common reasons for the errors. And then, what do we do in order to solve the variance, okay? So what we're talking about here is, if we pick on accounts receivable, for example, when you are processing your invoices, okay, you're going to do it at the customer level, right? So we know that a subledger, right, is that sub-journal within your accounting system where you have individual invoices for all your customers, okay? You don't just lump sum and post invoices as a whole. We want to keep records for all of our customers individually so that we know what our position is with each of our customers, who owes us money and how much money they owe us. Okay, but what's really important is that that those numbers are obviously accurate, but also if we have $11,000 worth of accounts receivable invoices posted, when we run our financial statements at the end of the month, okay, our balance sheet, this number posted as a whole on our balance sheet has to be equal to the sum of our accounts receivable subledger. And that's the process that we're talking about here. It is not uncommon and it is not unusual for there to be a variance between the amount that's posted on the accounts receivable control account, okay, on the face of our financial statements on our balance sheet here. And then when we drill down and look at the subledger, it's not uncommon for there to be a difference. And there's a variety of reasons that we'll talk about, why this happens, and then how we navigate through it. So that's really, a critical step when you're using an ERP system, especially if you're using, NetSuite, for example, being able to know where to find your variances, how to navigate through the system to go on this investigation to solve the variance and to answer to it. And I mean, why do we think this is important for you guys to understand? Well, because there's a potential liable issue here, right? If you're a public company, if we want to bring AVC into the mix here, okay, a company that's considering going public, right? We've talked about this repeatedly, that when you go public, your reporting requirements will change. The scrutiny to which your financial statements are going to be subjected to will change. So you want to minimize and mitigate any possible risk of a over or understatement, any variance, any errors. Okay, and I mean, if you get audited, it's not uncommon. I've walked through this, myself in the companies that I've worked for, where the auditors come in and they ask you, can you please validate for us your accounts receivable number? And all they want is the backup that shows the invoices outstanding that equal to the number that we're reporting as accounts receivable. If you generate your subledger and it comes in at 2.4 million, well, the auditor is going to say, well, hold on a second. You have a $1.482 million difference between what you're reporting as money coming in and what you're able to provide backup for. Which number is accurate? Okay, and if you have to then go back and restate your financial statements to reduce that number, obviously that doesn't look well on the company, number one. And number two, did we lose the possibility of receiving $1.482 million in cash? Did it slip through the cracks somehow? This is the way you need to start to think in order to understand, why we see value in teaching you guys much more than just how to use NetSuite. Okay, it's these tools and these reconciliations that will make not only your jobs better on the daily, but make the business operate better and reduce the losses and reduce the chances of fraud and reduce the chances of any errors. All of these things are positive enhancements for the business, and that's really what we're trying to to hope that you guys, that you're going to get out of this course is, even if this is your introduction, is to understanding the real value of using a system such as NetSuite and these tools and analytics within your job. Okay. So, NetSuite is so easy and wonderful to use in that, here's my accounts receivable control account. Okay, so account 1100 is my control account. And if I want to see the details behind it, all I have to do is click on this $2.582 million number. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to load. And here we go. Okay, we have the listing of all the invoices that were processed, credits, etc. Everything that went through, and you see it, right? Here's an invoice, and there's a payment. Okay, these two are the same company. But you see, you have all the data that you need at your fingertips. Okay, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it's catching up, just give it a sec. You'll see that the perfect match, 2.582 and 2.582 is obviously what we had seen listed on the balance sheet. Okay, so now what happens if I download only, my outstanding accounts receivable report? So let's see if I can find one. Let's go to my reports overview, and I go to customers. Okay, and I say get me an AR aging. And we have total open balance, and I want to go all the way down to the bottom. And I see here, okay, well, there's a significant difference between what my aging says I have outstanding and what my balance sheet says. Now I want you to bear in mind that because we are using this student database, this ABC, that there's multiple people all over North America, I believe, that are entering into this same database. So, typically you wouldn't have such a staggering difference between your accounts receivable balance. I mean, here our accounts receivable is a credit, so clearly we have a big problem. But just think of it from the theoretical point of view that we're talking about here. Okay, when I open up just a listing of all my invoices that are outstanding, I have this, negative $17 million number. But when I run the balance sheet for my company, I have a $2.5 million number. So there's clearly a disconnect here between the subledger and the control account on the balance sheet. Okay, and then what has to happen is the fact-finding stage. Okay, so now we have to figure out, how do we reconcile the two accounts? If it were me, what I would start with is probably a listing of all the entries that went through the control account. So what I would try to do maybe is go to reports, financial, transaction detail. Okay, so if anybody made journal entries to the account, we would be able to pick them up through here. So what we can try to do, is we can change our period if we want to look at, the year as a whole. We could go and grab January 2015 to November 2015. And then maybe we could try to do a little customizing and see what I'm looking for. Is account. Okay. When I want to add this, I want to add I'm hitting save. Oh, sorry guys. Sorry, it didn't work, but I don't want to waste time. So what I'm going to do instead is just, I have this custom transaction detail. I would export it. And it's downloading here in the corner. I'm going to open the custom transaction detail. Wrong one. Say yes. So here are all the transactions that were posted for the year. And then what I would do is sort it to see, do we have any entries that were posted to accounts payable? So I'm going to sort it by account. And I see, okay, we've got 3 here for accounts payable. And those would probably be, somewhere that I would start my investigation. Okay, so then I would go back and look within the NetSuite. I would try to look up, this Jill Muscat. I would open this, right? Again, the wonderful thing about NetSuite is that as soon as you see a line, you highlight it and you click it, and it opens up to that particular transaction. Okay. And what I would want to see is, okay, so someone posted this. Where did it go? Well, I would go to Actions and GL Impact. Okay, this went to accounts payable directly. So someone entered, this journal entry, and they did, sorry, I picked up accounts payable, but I meant to look at accounts receivable. So let me go back and grab an accounts receivable entry. Okay, so this one, accounts receivable, we click on it to view the transaction record, and we go Actions, GL Impact. Okay, so what we see here is a journal entry where someone debited the checking account and someone credited $1,100. So what happens is, if you're trying to post a payment, okay, theory, right, accounts receivable, when we want to reduce our balance, we credit that account, and when we need to apply the cash, we're going to debit the cash account. If someone just goes in and enters a journal entry for this accounts receivable receipt, and they don't actually go in and adjust it at the invoice level, the invoice will still show outstanding on the subledger, and so that will make your balance look higher on the balance sheet. Okay, so that's a common error right there, when you enter directly to the control account, which happens quite often. Okay, when you're entering directly to the control account versus actually closing out the invoices. And if you recall, if you look at transactions and then you go to customers, sales, let me find sales, okay, you can take care of your applications of payment through here versus accept customer payments, not through sales. You can accept your customer payments through the customers module, okay, so that you ensure that the transaction of the receipt of payment is directly linked to the invoice. Okay, and then you don't have to worry about entering a journal entry to the control account, which never then gets linked to the subledger account. Okay, so that's a really common issue with reconciliation. So whether we're reconciling accounts payable, accounts receivable, or inventory, that is generally one of the biggest spots where you're going to find your variances is journal entries. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of give you, this synopsis of, what it is we're talking about when we're saying that we want to reconcile the subledger to the general ledger. And basically it's, for those control accounts on the balance sheet that have that backup to it: accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, for all those types of accounts where you would have this supplementary ledger or journal. The two need to match up, and when they don't match up, you need to be able to find the reason why. So that's what we're talking about in this module. And I do have some points that I wanted to go over and that we'll discuss as well when we're in class. Just some of the basic procedures that you should be using when you're trying to reconcile. So just some of the, to go over some of the points is you want to always, on every month, every period closing, and I don't know if you recall, but before you can close out the period in NetSuite, okay, so if we go to our accounting and we go to manage our periods, okay, so for the periods that are still open, okay, or closed, even if they're closed, when we look at these past periods, if your AP and your AR don't match, you won't be able to close your period. So that's a wonderful internal control that NetSuite offers, and it's a great tool to have, so that you know that if there is a variance, that you are going to take a look at it and you're going to clear out that variance, and then you're going to be able to lock your accounts payable and your accounts receivable. Okay, so it's a great built-in step that NetSuite offers. So balancing your subledger. Point 2 says compare the ending subledger total to the ending totals in the control account in the general ledger as of the time the subledger report was produced. So one of the other errors that happens quite often in the accounting is that the timing of when you run your balances. If you run your balance 5 hours before someone goes in and closes that period, well, it's highly possible that in that 5 hours after you've downloaded your information, that someone went in there and entered a bunch of different transactions. And if you work in an accounting department, that right up until that cutoff dates to close the period, people are constantly making their final entries into the system. So timing is really important. You have to make sure before you start any reconciliation that maybe you rerun your trial balance or your balance sheet so that you're using the most accurate numbers. That's really, really important. Okay. So that's this point here of re-verifying the beginning subledger, just to make sure that you've caught it at the right point in time. The next note says manual entries might have been posted, so re-verify that this has or hasn't happened. Again, timing problems. This is definitely, one of the more common errors as well is people entering to the wrong period. Okay, so today is November 3rd. Okay, if the company is still in the process of closing October, some companies take 3 to 5 days after the calendar month end to close the period. If your period for October is still open and people start applying accounts receivable or accounts payable or writing down inventory, but that relates to November, if October is still open and someone really isn't paying attention to the period, on their screen that they're posting to, they could very easily be posting to October instead of November, and that will obviously throw off your results as well. Okay. And then just some errors, some of the more common errors that can be encountered. This says for accounts payable specifically, that's just the example that I pulled that I wanted to talk about. The invoice is entered using the wrong vendor record from the vendor file. Okay, so sometimes, where your invoices are being posted could be an issue. Okay, if you're running a company, with multi-segments, for example, you could be posting to the wrong segment, so that is definitely a problem. Invoice amounts could be entered incorrectly. Invoices might have been posted to the wrong GL accounts. Okay, so if you're not using, again, how NetSuite has the availability for us to accept payments for sales invoices, which matches it without question. If you're doing it in a more manual way or a journal entry type of way, and you're posting it to the wrong GL, maybe a cash application, instead of being posted to accounts receivable, was posted to salaries, or was posted to accounts payable. Anything is possible. So that's definitely a really good one. The invoice is created, but the journal entry hasn't been posted. Okay, in a lot of systems, and NetSuite is the same, you have to have the approver go in and approve the entries before they'll actually get posted. So I might have done my job in posting all of the accounts receivable receipts for the month, and they're sitting there in queue. But if my manager is unexpectedly sick for the day and no one goes in to post those transactions, they're just kind of hiding in limbo. So you have to know where you can go to find entries that have been entered but not posted. Okay, so that's definitely a good one. An invoice was prepaid, but check information was not input during invoice entry. So that's a more specific type of error. Again, invoice and payments entered using the wrong GL period. Wrong check numbers or cash is used during payment processing. So that would just make your application process incorrect. So that's another good one. But these are just some high level examples of the different types of scenarios that could go wrong, and and then it gives rise to your ability to then go investigate. So if I'm looking for errors, why I don't match in October, why don't I go take a look and see what's already been posted for November? If I run a quick download, then maybe I can compare invoice numbers or PO numbers, and then maybe I'll know that some of the postings for November actually should have been in October. I can go and take a look at GL accounts. One thing that I know that we used to do was there was always there were two accounts. I believe the last four digits were 0210 and 0120. And people just used to transpose the two numbers, and obviously items that should have gone to 210 were posted to 120, and items that should have been posted to 120 were posted to 210. So we just knew at the end of the month that if we had a balance issue, to run a quick download on all the entries that went to that account, take a look and see if they actually should have been posted to the other account. So it's looking for wrong GLs, looking for wrong periods, looking for correct customer or vendor, correct invoice or PO number, but someone manually transposed an invoice amount. Something like that would definitely be a common occurrence. So these are just some of the tips and the tricks that will help you, if you get to or are in the stage of account reconciliation for AP, AR, or inventory accounting. Okay, so understanding what it is that you're looking for. You're looking for, the reasons why your subledger and your control account don't balance. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense to you guys, and we'll talk about this some more in class. Thank you.